You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Claret and Blue podcast. We have Leighton Castle on the line with us today. How are you, Leighton?
I'm fine, thanks, Matt. Yourself? You well?
Yeah, not bad. In case there's any Villa fans wondering, well, I can't remember him playing for the Villa back in 1973. I'll give you the big introduction. Leighton is the brains behind, the creative genius behind the SOB on the Tyne banner, which wound up thousands of Geordies. And obviously we got Newcastle coming back to Villa Park this weekend, Steve Bruce and all. So I just wanted to take you back down memory lane later, really, to talk about the inspiration for that banner. Why did the kind of mischievous element of your personality decide to create that banner in the first place?
Purely to wind up the Geordies. Simple as that. There's no other reason other than to just wind up the Geordies on the day. Going into that game, you remember Newcastle had recently appointed Shearer, and he was there like Messiah. If you remember, we had another banner as well, who's your next Messiah, Antor Deck, whatever, because the whole thing about the Geordies, more to do with the media, I think, in all fairness, is, the way they just kind of pile on, their love and admiration for the Geordie fans are the best in the world. And, there's all this kind of mythical thing about, it's the only club in the city and everybody in Newcastle sports. And you can say that about a lot of clubs, in all fairness, apart from being the only club in the city. But, all fans are important to the clubs and all fans are great. But, it was purely to wind them up because we knew that they would bite. And it's just fun. There's no malice intended in it. It was them coming to Villa Park, a very high probability that they could get relegated on that day. And it was just an opportunity not to be missed. It really was. And we also had some cloth left over from a few years before from the We're Not Fickle banner that the lads did.
I love that element of the story. I love all the elements of the story, but I just love the idea that, just got a bit of cloth left over and I might as well, so the missus is going to use it for dusters if I don't put it to good use.
I'm feeling sorry for the Geordies at the moment, to be honest, with Stevie Bruce there. They're going through what we went through, and I think they're all seeing it. But there's this mythical thing about Newcastle United, and it just winds me up, to be honest.
Just setting the scene back then, I think it was May 2009. I think I'm right in saying that a Damien Duff own goal eventually did for Newcastle that day and sent them down. But I think it was like a military operation for you, wasn't it, in terms of when you unfurled this flag? Yeah.
So I used to sit in the Holte End, but when O'Neill joined the Villa, my older brother, decided to come back after a few years away on exile with marriage and kids, whatever. He wanted the season ticket, and the only place I could get a season ticket with him together was going up into the North Stand, and that's where I still am. The thing about the North Stand, we're in the North Stand upper, it's not the best place to drape the banners over, and where we sit, we're just a bit further back to be able to know the guides properly in front of us, to ask them to do us, to drape it for us. So what we decided to do was for Goffey and Mike and the gang, they would take the banner in. We had two banners. We had the Uzi Messiah banner and the SOB on the Tyne banner. The thing is, we was always going to have the Messiah banner draped throughout the game because that was a permanent dig. But we knew that with the SOB on the Tyne banner, which was the big one, when we had to get different cloth for that. That was white cloth, I think. It was the Messiah banner, which was the orange cloth. But the idea about the SOB on the Tyne, we wanted something to unfurl if they got relegated. And it just seemed perfect. It was like a headline pun, which we just couldn't resist. SOB on the Tyne. It felt great. It was there ready to unfurl once we knew that they was going down. So I was up in the North Stand. As you know, the phone signals aren't the best at Villa Park even now, but back then, 10 years ago, I think there was even worse. And I said to Goffey, don't drape it until we know it's definite, maybe a minute before the ref's going to blow his whistle, or when, the injury time ball goes up. And I could just see it being ready to be filled over. I think, not yet, because, we didn't want to unfurl it, and then for them to go in the eyes and for us to have egg on our faces. When it was unfurled, if you remember, there was a massive cheer starting to kind of ripple and just erupt around the stadium, and everybody in the lower Holts was like, looking backwards and pointing up at it. It was about the timing, and all the credit for the timing goes to Goffey and Mike and the gang there. And there's photographs now that I think the photograph that you might put up is with a few of the people standing over it and looking down. I mean, those all knew what was going on. It makes me chuckle because some of the photographs I've seen and the comments on the chat boards have all been calling all these people all the names under the sun, and it was me at the opposite end of the crowd looking at the Geordies, and I could see the Geordie fans in the away section, kind of spitting blood. And it just made it even funnier. On
top of that, and whether it was more material left over again, or whether you got a discount from Walsall Market or wherever you got it from, but it happened again, didn't it? I mean, obviously we shared their pain, didn't we? Because we went down. We went down in 2015, 16, and I think you just managed to put a little ad on, didn't you? Because they came down with us that year.
I never expected it to make such a kind of palaver. I mean, still to this day, there's kind of this stupid fake rivalry between the two clubs, and it might be, it is through that kind of that first banner. But banter between football fans, I love it. As long as it doesn't kind of go over the line into violence, I think banter's fine. I'm missing that so much at the moment, not being able to be at the ground, and I think that's what makes football so special. I think me and you, Matt, we're from the same kind of vintage, and we can remember the days in the Holte End, when it was terracing still, and we was at the back end of that, where we saw and was able to see the transition. I would love to go back to the all-standing terrace of the Holte End. The banter felt different then, and it's become a lot more sterilised nowadays, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does take away some of the fun, which only I think you can find on terraces. I think that humour you can find on terraces, it's unique, and I love it, and I'm really missing it. So to all the Geordies, no offence, I feel very sorry for you at the moment with what's happening with Brucey, and you are a big club. I like Newcastle. I've got a lot of good customers up there, and they are great people. But when it comes to football, for those 90 minutes, I reserve the right to be able to take the mick.
I think that's probably one of my greatest frustrations during this lockdown, that, people said that football's nothing without fans, and they're kind of almost trying to prove that football is something without fans. And to me, if football was just that kind of 90 minutes that happens on any night of the week now, a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, a Saturday afternoon, a Sunday evening or whatever, I think it'd be a bit kind of boring. But I like all the kind of sideshow and the fun. It is tribalism. I'm with you that the tribalism stops at a point where it remains banter and it doesn't get out of hand. Yeah. But I think that kind of bit of mischief was encapsulated by the banners that you've put together.
It's not the 90 minutes of football as much as what happens before the game, and meeting up with your mates, the whole thing surrounding those 90 minutes. That's really important, and as soon as we can return to those that kind of thing, the better. Back to what you were saying regarding the second time with the banner. It was the year we got relegated, obviously, wasn't it? And we was bringing them down with us. They were a poor team, and I think, if I remember correctly, that result at Villa Park was going to determine if they was going to get relegated or staying up. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Maybe we'll check that.
My mind's gone.
It's been like 100 years ago now. They were 6 or 7, but because they made such a fuss about the first banner and got so riled by it, we thought, well, we can't miss out on this opportunity. So what we did, we took it in the game, but we just put "again" on it. If you remember, we had a great big extra piece of cloth and we just attached it onto the SOB on the Tyne, so it just read "SOB on the Tyne again," and it was perfect. It was just kind of an open goal. We just couldn't miss it. And what was good about it as well, the days leading up to that match, we was like reading in the papers and all that, forums on Twitter, whatever. All the Georges were going to bring their own banners and all that kind of stuff and get one over the Villa fans. Taking the mick out of the Villa fans because we were relegated and one of the worst teams in the division ever, I think we were that season. But if you remember that day, it was like a party at Villa Park. Can you remember all the inflatables, which were bombarded onto the pitch before just at kick-off? I mean, it was crazy. It was it was football humour. We're down. We know we're rubbish. You can't knock us. If anyone's going to take the mick out of us, well, we're going to do it better than what you're going to do.
It was weird. It was like it was like the kind of world's greatest wake in a way, wasn't it? What I mean? Because I think there was the protest before the game as well, wasn't there? With the town crier kind of marching down from the Holte pub.
All of the anger about how poor the team was. I think it had been sucked, like all the life had been sucked out of us. The only thing left for us to do was to celebrate the season ending.
What was the fallout like in your messages then? I should imagine you were kind of the most hated man in the northeast, weren't you, for a couple of months?
It took quite a few months actually for any direct messages to come my way, because I was reading. Obviously, you could read it on the Villa hashtag kind of thing, and it was as a bunch of Villa fans, it was being used as a collective rather than aimed just towards myself or me and the gang of lads. On the whole, I think it just touched a nerve. You can't go around high and mighty saying that you're the best fans in the world and then not expect to have a little bit of ridicule now and again. I have no question that the Newcastle fans, the proper Newcastle fans who go to the games or whatever, they support their club, just as much as what you and me do. Every fan is passionate about their club. It doesn't matter who you support. And, Newcastle are our big club. It's a fantastic stadium up there. We've been through a lot of difficulties over the last 10 years, especially as a club, as a fan base. We've saw the club need to go out of business altogether. And how heartbreaking it is. And we know just through COVID, the one thing which has kept most of the fans, positive and happy, I'm sure, through COVID, more than many other things, apart from their family good health, would be the Villa. I mean, we were nailed on to get relegated before COVID. It was going to happen. And then since it, we had Project Restart where we stayed up and played some decent stuff. And then since, obviously, the start of this season, it's been brilliant. It's been one of the best periods in our last 10 years. Unfortunately, not being able to be there. So we know just how important it is for our football club to play well and to do well, and for everything behind the scenes to be going well. And when it isn't, it can really affect you. I always do feel sorry for football fans when their club is being mistreated. And with the Geordies at the moment, they don't deserve what's going on with their club. I mean, they've got an owner there who, he's just, let's say, be honest, he's a snake, when it comes to football ownership. He's not a custodian of that club, doing any credit at all. And I think they're in very, very high risk of getting relegated this season. I do genuinely feel concerned for the Geordie fans, because they don't deserve what's happening there. No football fans deserve it. On top of that, they've got Steve Bruce, and oh my God, the comment is coming out with, I've been in charge X amount, and now I'm going to do it my way. What? But why haven't you been doing it your way since you've been
Whose
there?
way has he been doing it?
The thing is with Steve Bruce, we know what his way is. His way is turgid, boring, negative football. He doesn't go out to win a game. He goes out not to lose. When you're not really in the mix to win cup competitions or compete for European places, at least you want to see some decent football and get excited. Those Geordie fans at the moment, I'm sure that even with all the games on TV, I bet they'd rather be watching reruns of Crossroads or Brookside rather than
Spiker Grove in it, and Joss's Giants up there.
Yeah, Joss's Giants, best theme tune ever. I used to live there. Manchester though, not Newcastle. Weird, but I've got the DVD set. Now it's great. But I suspect some of them will be finding other things to do than watching Steve Bruce's team at the moment, because it's that bad. What they could really do with, in all fairness, this transfer window is to sign Glenn Whelan. That's the best thing that they could do. That's the best thing they could do. But it's a shame there's going to be no cabbages at Villa Park when we play them on Saturday nights. I'm wondering maybe if your mate Ash can sneak one in.
Might be able to get some sprouts in his pockets potentially.
maybe left over from Christmas.
I love that. Your message to Newcastle fans: get sign Glenn Whelan, get him on penalty duties, and raid the local greengrocers. Thanks so much for taking us on a little kind of trip down memory lane. Like you, I like the nonsense and the fun and the banter that surrounds football. And I think your little bits of kind of art and craft, just giving us a little bit of a chuckle along the way, because football's not always 7-2 victories over Liverpool, is it? And glorious goals. Sometimes you have to find ways of coping with the miserable times as Newcastle are finding at the moment. So just wanted to kind of finish off by saying thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Stay safe. Eventually we'll meet over a pint in the shadows of Villa Park somewhere, sometime soon, hopefully, mate. But until then, up the Villa.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, up the Villa.